All right, we're just going to give it a couple of more minutes here just to make sure everyone gets in, and then we will get started. So I still see quite a few people in the back getting signed up and stuff, so we'll get going. All right, we're going to get started here. So this is great to see everybody here. This is our first meeting in 2 years that we've all been able to get together, and then we've got a lot of new faces too. So if this is your first meeting with us as a group, raise your hand. Wow. All right. Yeah, we've got some new people. If you could, would you be willing, for those of you who put your hands up, could you stand up and just give a quick introduction? All right. Awesome. Thank you. Welcome. STEM. Yep. Yeah, and you've been here like 2 weeks? Yeah, it's great. Yeah, excited to have you here. All right. Two gentlemen in the front. Yeah, great. Thank you.
I'm Chris. I've been here for 7 months as a building planner.
All right. Welcome.
Hey, I'm Adam. I've been a building cleaner for almost 2 years now, right here at the high school.
I'm Charlie. I'm at the high school. I've been here a little over a year.
Great.
Hi, I'm Juan. I just started like a month ago going to high school.
I know there's some more in here. All right.
My name is Carmen Samis. I'm working in the business school for 2 months.
Very good. Thank you. We have a couple in the back there yet. All right. Great. Thanks. Very good. Thank you. And Mark, I don't think you've been in one of these meetings, have you? All right. Well, go ahead. Like most of you probably know Mark. He's in all the buildings too. So, well, thank you. Let's give him a warm welcome and thank you for being here. So these meetings, we normally do these annually, but with COVID and all of that, we did Safe Schools online training in the past. Excuse me. So this year we're going to do a group training. And I think we're going to try to do this like every other year so we can just get together and share ideas and things like that. This one's a little more abbreviated because we did the MASMUS custodial training days. How many of you guys attended that? Okay, great. I would like to, at some point, and then maybe next year, have everyone attend that. So it's a 2-day class, but it's the same class on both days. So you guys will be able to split your shifts so that you have coverage in your buildings when that happens. So stay tuned for that next year when it comes around. We might be hosting it here. So I'm kind of working with that a little bit. We'll see what happens there. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Dan. Dan Holcomb's with IEA, and I know some of you probably don't know him. A lot of you do. Daniel is with a company that helps us out, helps me out a lot, doing all of our health and safety. They do asbestos management. They do indoor air quality management. They help us with our lockout takeout programs. There's a ton of things that IEA does, and I'll have Daniel kind of touch base on some of those too when he starts. But yeah, please welcome Daniel, and we will get going.
Thank you all. My name is Daniel Holcomb. I've been with the district assisting with health and safety for 4+ years now. So my email's below, daniel.holcomb@ieasafety.com. I also am responding to the health and safety rpsmn.org email as well. I'm on those emails. So if you ever have any questions or concerns, bring it up to your supervisor, your lead, Dan Kretzinger, or you can put an email to that email and I will respond as well. If there's a staff member, a teacher that has concerns, have her reach out to that email as well. I respond as soon as possible, and myself and Dan get those email notifications. Some summer projects that we have going on this year, we'll be redoing our confined space, our lockout tagout, and our rooftop fall protection and ladders throughout the district. With all the building renovations that have occurred the last year and two, we'll be doing new assessments, new labeling, new procedures. So all those building leads, maintenance, bus garage mechanics, we will be in your spaces doing those assessments and inspections. I did send out an email to those employees to notify them as well. And Mike Pruzinski will be on site throughout that month. We will also be doing the turf testing, the GMAX testing. That's to measure the hardness of the turf field at the high school at the Spartan Stadium. We'll be doing that next month. Then also we'll be doing a district-wide noise monitoring for various departments in the district. Certain custodial staffs, maintenance, bus mechanics. We'll be doing band, orchestra, choir, industrial tech. They'll all be getting monitored throughout a day to make sure that we're below OSHA levels for noise and making sure that we don't need to have hearing protection required during certain tasks, or if it is, then maybe we have to require that. So that'll be more information to come in the fall as well. I wanted to bring this up right away is that we do our mock OSHA inspections usually every March or April. We did it at the high school and bus garage this year. Myself, Dan, Luke Salmon with SFM, they are your workers' comp insurer. We did the walkthrough with the leads at these buildings, and we identified some concerned areas that we need to fix. So one thing is that we also got Michael Manning, who's the director of food service, involved with these garbage disposal guards. These are missing throughout all buildings whenever we're there doing the inspection. These need to be installed onto the drain in order to prevent anyone from getting their hand down there to the actual disposal blades. That's a common OSHA violation that's seen throughout schools. Missing drain covers, we'll talk about slips, trips, and falls. That's a very simple one as well. Having a hole in the ground, catching your foot on it, tipping over. If you have your hands full with something, you can't brace yourself. That's a pretty severe incident right there. Extension cords being used as permanent wiring. If you're using an extension cord, it's required to have that removed within 90 days. OSHA says that that's temporary wiring, and within 90 days that has to be removed. Also, a common thing that we see is daisy chaining, so that'll be having an extension cord into another extension cord, making it a long cord, or having a power strip, and then also attaching an extension cord onto that to making it a longer cord. We can't be doing that. It's very important. Another OSHA violation that's commonly found. If you need some additional outlets, use a very long extension cord, or use a very long power strip that is properly rated. The state fire marshal finds that to be okay. Just always use a longer cord rather than use cords to cords connecting. Lock-out-tagout procedures weren't updated in the boiler room. That's what's going to be occurring next month. We had a hoist that we couldn't verify the load limit on it, so Dan and myself need to have an engineer come out to verify that, and that's properly hooked up for what it is hauling. Blocked electrical panels, same thing with like eye washes and all that. Maintain 36 inches of clearance in front and around it, making sure that it is accessible in the event of emergency. And then also chemical containers need to have proper labeling. So labeling of what the chemical name is. So it's best if we can have labels sent from the manufacturer. So I know like Flint Scientific and then other chemical companies. So they will provide secondary container labels if we reach out and ask for them. So rather than just writing down, isopropyl alcohol on the container, that's not sufficient for OSHA, which we'll discuss more about proper labeling as well. And there also was an eye wash that was removed at the boiler room during the renovation process. So we got to make sure that we maintain those areas with eye washes and other safety equipment, because if the materials and the chemicals aren't going away, we still have that hazard there. So we have a lot to cover today. The reasoning why that we do it all at once is to help prevent you guys from having to do 8 hours of the online training. So if we were going to be doing every topic like this on the safe schools, that'd be roughly 10 minutes to 30 minutes apiece. So we try to squeeze it all into one, make it site-specific for the district, because we all have different hazards from what Edina or a different school district might have. So we want to at least have the availability to discuss in person, bring up any questions. I do assume that this will take roughly an hour and 15 minutes. We'll have a break in between as well. So I'll get started, and it should go pretty quickly. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Don't just wait till the end. Just feel free to raise your hand or to speak out. It's not a problem. If you guys have to stand up and stretch or go get something to eat or drink during the presentation, feel free to do that as well. I know sitting down for a while is going to be pretty tough. I do have a break probably within 35 to 45 minutes into the presentation for us to walk around and stuff as well. So OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, they are kind of govern this training. They require this training. They have various health and safety standards that we must abide by. We must also provide training programs to affected employees because you guys are exposed to hazardous chemicals, hazardous materials, various other things that could cause harm to an employee. So that's what you're here doing today. If there is a safety hazard that is brought up, feel free to bring up any safety hazard at any time. Reach out to Dan or myself. Don't wait for an injury to occur. If you have a near miss, or if you do see a certain concern that you want to have addressed or discussed, bring it up right away. Don't just wait till there's a safety committee meeting, which does meet every other month as well. But the quicker that we know about it, the faster that we can remediate it. And we try to remediate it by elimination. So if there's a hazardous chemical that we can reduce or remove from the district, and that there's a lesser hazardous chemical that we can use, that's great. That removes the hazard altogether. If there is a ladder in the district, or a certain spot in the district where you can't get a ladder set up properly, or if it's a high use area where we should probably have a fixed ladder installed, we can do that as well. Just make sure to bring up that hazard to us, and we can get that addressed with our contractor. Engineering controls could be like a machine guarding. Like if we see that there's a machine guard that's off a machine, which is a big issue with OSHA as well. Make sure that we do have a guard installed there properly before it is in use. If it is taken off, we need to have our leads lock and take it out so no one can use it until we have a new guard to install. And then lastly is PPE. That's the last line of defense for a hazard, because that also requires that a person must wear it properly, must be inspecting it and maintaining it to efficiently block the hazard from yourself. So that's a last line of defense, but sometimes that's the only defense that's feasible for certain hazards. We'll discuss ladders very briefly. So we have ladders throughout the entire district, step ladders, A-frame ladders, extension ladders, fixed ladders. It's important that we always are inspecting these before use. You want to make sure that the shoes are in good condition. You want to make sure that they're set up in proper soil. It's not going to be any sort of incline or decline that you're setting up against. You want to make sure that all the steps are clear and free of debris, so you're not going to be slipping off of them. Look for any sharp or worn edges that you're putting your hands or feet on. And then if you do notify or understand that there is a hazard or a ladder that is not working properly, take it out, give it to your lead, or just dispose it all together in the garbage, and then reach out to your lead or Dan to get a new one. The last thing we want to do is have you use a defective ladder and then have that cause a major injury. If you're setting up an extension ladder, make sure you have 4-to-1 ratio. Every 4 feet up, 1 foot away from the side of the building. Making sure that it's on proper ground as well. When you're traveling up and down, make sure to be having 3 points of contact, 2 feet, 1 foot, or 2 feet, 1 hand, or 2 hands, 1 feet. Making sure that you are not stepping off early. That can cause a lot of sprained ankles as well. Make sure to keep your belt buckle within the rungs of the ladder as well. If you have to overreach, make sure to get down, readjust the ladder to a different spot, and then climb back up to do the work. Take time to secure the ladder properly. Do not connect 2 ladders together to make it a long ladder. That's a really big issue with OSHA as well. Do not bring a ladder onto a lift to get to a higher ground as well. That's not what a lift is meant for. Do not use ladders in high wind areas. That's very important. Making sure that the ladder is weighted for what you're going to be doing. You want to make sure that you have the weight capacity for yourself and anything that you're bringing up with you. The Minnesota OSHA requirement that came out a couple of years ago was that for every fixed ladder that's greater than 24 feet needs to have fall protection installed on it. So if it's a previously installed ladder in the district, we have until 2036 to have that be updated with that fall protection. And that fall protection is going to be this cable right here. Then you're going to be connecting your lanyard, and that's connected to your harness onto it to prevent you from falling off the ladder when you are climbing up it. All right, next is slip, trips, and falls. This is probably the biggest injury concern with school districts. According to SFM, your work comp insurer, very common throughout the wintertime. Making sure that you do have proper footwear is a big key. Sprains and strains, broken bones are actually pretty common throughout the year when carrying stuff into the building and leaving the building. You'll see the walking like a penguin signs throughout. Poor housekeeping, making sure that you don't have cords throughout your work area that you're going to be working on. Snow and ice, making sure that you have proper removal and swift removal. And if there is any areas of concern, try to cone it off for employees and staff. Don't get caught up in there and slip over. Other increasing risk factors could be age, poor eyesight, poor lighting, physical condition, fatigue. If you're on your feet all day and then you're trying to be walking outside, maybe you're not looking at the ground as much and paying attention. Maybe you're just tired trying to get into the car. Medications, above the influence, stuff like that. So prevention, if you're in the kitchen areas, make sure to have any sort of drip pans or anti-fatigue mats that also do catch any sort of wetness. Maintain and clear your work areas. All right, then we're going to discuss asbestos as well. There is asbestos in, I believe, every building still. In certain areas throughout the building, it was a good building material. Now with all the medical, medical information that came out, it is a material that does cause a lot of harm if it is deteriorating or if it is being messed with by staff and students. So if you just leave it be and it's still in good condition, it's still a great material. But whenever we do have some sort of building construction project in that area, we will have that removed first before we do any further work. Or if during our inspections and we identify any sort of concerned areas, we also will have that addressed. And our inspections occur every 6 months in the district. That's required by Minnesota Department of Health. So asbestos is a natural occurring material that is used throughout various different areas, building materials, brake pads. We've even found it in backboards of basketball hoops. There's a lot of the older versions. Could be in the vinyl tiles. Usually it's a 9x9, but we have seen positive 12x12s. Pipe insulation, mastic, the glue that's underneath carpets or underneath floor tiles, ceiling tiles, a lot of different areas. It's always best to have it sampled rather than just assume it's not and then doing the work on it. If you guys ever have any questions on any sort of building materials in your work area, you can reach out to Dan. Dan has all the inspection records, so he can let you know if there's a certain material in the district, if it's been tested or not, and if it is asbestos containing or not. So it's a poor conductor of heat and electricity, so that's a good positive. If you are building, if you're constructing a building back then, and it's very cheap to actually get as well. So poor conductor of heat and electricity, so it's going to be great for fireproofing. Does not burn under normal conditions. Does not chemically break down. Lightweight and aerodynamic. So it's very simple to be transporting throughout the building to install. But there are a lot of hazardous things that come about with it now. It is lightweight and aerodynamic, so that means that if a fiber does get into the air, it's going to stay elevated for a long period of time into people's breathing zones. So that's why it's important that, if there is identified area that is asbestos, do not be cutting into it. Do not be having students, running around those areas, doing whatever, making sure that we do keep some space in between that. That's why if you ever do watch a company that comes in and does any removal of asbestos, they'll wet the product down first before doing the cutting or whatnot, because it prevents it from getting airborne and then causing any sort of issues. If there is a project where they are removing the asbestos, we always do clear the air first before reoccupancy. So if we are doing a project in your work area, we have done air samples before we leave the project to ensure that the air is back to normal air and there's no asbestos fibers in that area. So you're a HERA designated person is Dan Kretzinger. He's the one that's in charge of the program. IEA does the inspections, and we also do the air monitoring during projects, but he is the one to reach out to if you have any questions or concerns on a certain area. Friable ACM, asbestos-containing materials, is what we're focused on. So that's the airborne stuff that can be floating in the air for a long period of time. That means if you have a material that's asbestos and you can crumble it with hand pressure, that's the stuff that can easily get airborne. So that's why it's important that we always keep it encapsulated, such as with some sort of outside layer. But if you guys do notice any sort of damage or deterioration of this, make sure to let Dan know. We can get that taken care of as soon as possible. Could be breaking down based off of people touching it, someone messing with it, or it could be from moisture that's causing it to break down as well. The outer shell, that's the lamination part. It's a very small diameter. It's a lot less than it's a lot smaller than your human hair, so you can't see it. That's why it gets down into your lungs really easily without getting caught by your cilia or anything, or any other defensive mechanisms. It gets down there and can sit down there for a long time until it becomes a big problem. MDH is involved with any sort of projects with removal. So MDH does do inspections during the process to make sure that the abatement contractors are doing a proper job. So diseases that could occur with this is asbestosis. It's probably the most common one. Same with mesothelioma. These latency periods can be 10 to 40 years. So your exposure it doesn't occur always right away. It could be prolonged throughout your lifetime. That's why it's important that you protect yourself from this at an early age. If you are a cigarette smoker and you also do work with asbestos, you have a very high increased level of getting some sort of disease with asbestos. So next we'll talk about bloodborne pathogens. So everyone in this room has responsibilities for cleaning up a blood spill in the event that someone has a bloody nose or whatnot. So that's kind of why you're covered under the BBP standard through OSHA. So a bloodborne pathogen could be something that's bacterial, viral, fungal, could be a parasitic. It can be transmissed through airborne, bloodborne, contact, a lot of different transmission areas. So we also have to discuss COVID-19 as well still, because it's still going on, and OSHA does require it. It is considered a workplace hazard. So the symptoms are going to be chills, shakings and chills, muscle pain. You guys have all probably read this a million times by now. Some of you may have already had COVID-19 or tested positive for it. So fever, cough, making sure that you guys do notify your leads, Dan, in the event that you guys are positive, so you guys don't come into work that day. Social distance yourself, if possible. Cover your cough and sneeze. Proper cleaning and disinfecting. You know, you guys do have a lot of disinfectants in the district. Making sure that you are spraying that disinfectant on and allowing it to kill the virus before wiping it off. There's contact times between 1 and 5 minutes for different chemicals. Making sure that you guys do understand what the chemical you are using. Then lastly, washing your hands. Everyone knows that's going to kill and deactivate all those viruses. So a bloodborne pathogen is going to be an infectious microorganism that's in human blood that can cause disease. This can be transmitted through just contact with broken skin, contact with a contaminated sharp, and OSHA does require that we discuss HIV and hepatitis B and C part of the training. So we do have an exposure control plan. Your exposure control officer is Michelle Whiteside. She's the district nurse. She's the one that's kind of in charge of dealing with any sort of sharps injuries and any sort of injuries that do occur, any bloodbornes that do require medical attention. She does keep all that information. This does include hepatitis B vaccinations. So everyone in this room has the ability to get a 3-series vaccination shot for hepatitis B. So everyone has that, and it's free, complimentary of the district. I do have forms up here. If you guys have never filled this form out, or if you guys have filled the form out but now you want to get the shot, feel free to come up here and fill it out. All you new employees, feel free to come up here and fill this out as well. I want to know if you consent to getting the vaccination or if you decline it altogether. It's just required by OSHA that we have that on file, that we did offer it to you and you have either accepted or declined it. We just need to have that on file, and that goes into HR, and that's in your employee file. We don't share that with anyone. We just got to have that on file in case OSHA does audit us. So modes of transmission: needle sticks, contaminated sharps, glass. Always be cautious if you're in the science classroom or if you're in the health services or in the bathrooms. You know, a needle stick with a sharp could always be sticking out of a garbage can. Always be cautious of that. It should never come to that, but you can't trust everyone nowadays to be putting in the proper sharps disposal containers. So hepatitis B, you'll notice that hepatitis B and C are very much like the flu. So that's why if you are in contact with blood, that you guys either get tested, decline the testing, but just watch your overall symptoms altogether for the next 4 to 6 months, because it does take a prolonged time to develop all these symptoms. There are chronic and acute symptoms. So sudden onset could just be, you're feeling ill for temporary feeling ill. A chronic feeling could be you have muscle pain for a long period of time without any exertion of exercise or whatnot. Inflammation of the liver. Symptoms could be fever, fatigue, loss of appetite, could be nauseous, very similar to what a flu could be, but always be cautious of if you are in contact with blood. Hepatitis B has a 3-dose vaccination. We do have a clinic in Edina that the district does contract with. So if you guys do want that vaccination, we can help get that set up with the clinic. It's a 3-step. So from the start of it to the end of it, it's going to be 16 weeks for those 3 different series of shots. So the effectiveness is 90% in healthy adults. Booster doses are not recommended for normal immune employees. If you guys aren't in that normal, immune status, you'll want to discuss that with your physician to see if you guys should be getting a booster on that. So the vaccine is safe, but soreness is a common effect. The benefits is that it protects you from the hepatitis B disease in the event that you do come in contact with it. Keeps you from missing work, keeps that paycheck coming in, and keeps you from preventing from getting any sort of liver disease and cancer from that exposure. Like I said, I do have the vaccination forms with me. Feel free to come up here if you're a new employee or if you're an old employee that wants to change their consent. Here's an example of what they are. This is the form that I have up there with me. This is the form that you'll get from HR that helps authorize the form and then also keeps the dates in order for your three series. Hepatitis C is going to be yes, Michelle. You can change your mind anytime. Anytime. Yep, you just got to let us know that you want to change your mind. We'll get you a form. You can sign it and then get to HR to authorize it. Yep, anytime you can change it. Hepatitis C can be very similar to hepatitis B. Inflammation of the liver. There are no medications that are going to help prevent you from getting hepatitis C except for prevention, so just be cautious of it. Same thing with the acute infection. It's going to be fever, fatigue, dark urine, abdominal pain, loss of appetite. So very same thing, similar to flu, but be cautious of if you ever came in contact with that blood or that sharps. Chronic infection could be fatigue, depression. Then lastly, HIV/AIDS. So there is a lot of good treatments now that help HIV and AIDS people live with the symptoms now. There's about half as many now are being treated as half that have died in the past lifetime with HIV/AIDS. So people are living with it, living normal lives now due to a lot of the treatments that came out recently. But there is no cure, but there's medications that help prolong your life and live a normal life. So over time, HIV will attack your immune system, and this stage of the disease will turn into AIDS. So early stages, it's going to be the same thing, flu-like symptoms, 40 to 90% have those flu-like symptoms. But it will progress towards AIDS, and that's why the only reason why you know is if you're getting tested, they'll test your blood for various different levels of different things. It'll be rapid weight loss, could be recurring fevers or profuse night sweats, a lot of different things that can occur. So again, prevention, but also if you guys do come in contact with it, you got to bring it up to us to let us know. So some modes to prevent this from occurring could be sharps containers, universal precaution, always treating blood as if it is infected, wearing your gloves, properly disposing of the materials. Could be doing any sort of vaccinations or training, making sure those sharps containers don't get more than 3/4 full, because if that's the case, maybe they won't be closing properly. Treating all blood and sharps as if it is infected with blood. Always getting your PPE to be properly cleaned up and disposing it, using the proper disinfectants. And then doing your inspections on the PPE as well, making sure the gloves and the goggles are fully intact. You're not using direct contact, you're using indirect goggles. Indirect goggles means that if there's a splash of liquid, it's not going to seep through the vented holes. It's indirect, so it's facing the opposite way, so any sort of water that hits it isn't going to be going inside into the goggles. Always be inspecting your gloves. If you guys ever do need additional equipment, make sure to reach out to Dan, myself. We can get you all that. Wash the exposed area with soap and water. You guys know how to clean by now with COVID and all that. Always disinfect tools. So for instance, if you're, yes?
Do they still say, like, once it's dried, whatever part of it dies off of it?
There is, I think HIV/AIDS is 24 hours of being exposed to the air. I think hepatitis B and C is 48 to 72. But yes, but actually if it is dried on there, water can still activate it if it's within a certain time frame. I forgot what it was though. Just be cautious of that, still disinfected as normal. Same thing with all your tools. If you're using any sort of tools to pick up any sort of contaminated sharps in the science classroom, make sure you disinfect those after use as well. So all the health service staff should have red biohazard bags to help dispose of proper cleanup materials. If it is soaking with blood, so if the blood could transfer from one paper towel to the next, it is considered a regulated medical waste and needs to be put in the biohazard bag and disposed of with your sharps. So that's kind of one thing, is that if it's dry blood on the towel or on the paper towel, it's not considered transferable according to OSHA. Same thing with, like, I don't understand why, because if it gets wet again, it could be transferable, but they state that, you know, if it is dry blood on paper towel, it can be disposed of as general trash. So another thing to be cautious with, you know, always wearing gloves when you're handling garbage as well, in the event that someone didn't dispose of it properly. So for BBP is that, so exposure to, you know, cracked skin, if it's fully intact skin, OSHA does not consider that as an exposure event. So it has to be cracked skin, broken skin, contact with your eye, mouth, you know, on your finger, but you touch your mouth or eye, stuff like that. A sharps needle stick. A lot of different ways of being exposed. So if you ever do get exposed onto yourself, always be inspecting your skin to make sure that, you know, there wasn't any sort of break in the skin, that it couldn't get into your bloodstream, stuff like that. So I think this might be the last, or one of the last topics before our break. So please just bear with us. So compressed gas cylinders are going to be a lot of different hazards. So the one thing is going to be an explosive hazard. You know, if you do crack the top of it and it does create a missile, I do have a quick video on that just shows a brief video of that. So things can go flying. You know, if you do crack that regulator, it can act as a missile, fly through building materials. That's why it's very important that we always have those latched up on the wall with the chain, or latched onto the cart that's being utilized. Also having it labeled, properly labeling it with what it is. The last thing you want to do is have it be filled in with the improper material, because some material is incompatible, can cause it to explode when the person's filling it up. Always have the proper label on there, which air gas, or whoever you guys use, will have the proper label on it. Always secure acetylene and oxygen at least 20 feet away from each other, unless it's on the cart together in use. Must be hooked and chained properly on the cart as well. We do have signage in the area that will say caution or danger of the compressed gas. A lot of the compressed gases are flammable as well, so make sure that you're not storing combustible material nearby. Always use care when handling the compressed gas cylinders. Always try to move it, you know, kind of shimmy it around rather than drag it across. Use some sort of mechanical aid if you can, if there is something around there. Here's a quick video on this of what can happen if you don't pay attention and you're not securing it properly. So always be cautious of that. You never know; it could easily tip over in a classroom. You know, hit the corner of a desk or you know, something like that. Play it again. All right. Yeah, just missed him. So it's somewhere. I'm not sure where exactly it is. All right, employer to know. This must be the last one. So employer to know is a Minnesota OSHA standard. It's required by the state. Federal OSHA has hazard communication. Minnesota has employer to know. It's the same stuff, but Minnesota OSHA requires a little bit more. So we do have a written program. It discusses various topics such as training, safety data sheets, inventories of chemicals. So every year we do an inventory of an area, and we maintain a safety data sheet log through Velocity EHS now, which I'll discuss more about how to get to. So every chemical that we have on site, we need to have a safety data sheet for it. In the event that we do have exposure, someone does ingest it, someone does come in contact with it, you know, seeps into their skin. We need to have that available to provide a doctor in the event that you go to the ER or go see a doctor for a cut with a sorting glue that, you know, came in contact with it. It's really important that we also know how to properly, you know, prevent it from exposure with PPE and whatnot. The SDS will all state, you know, all the information. So there are chemical health hazards. So toxic irritants, corrosive oxidizers. You'll see these pictograms throughout a label from the manufacturer. These are required to be on all of our labels. And then it will state on the SDS if it's rated 1 through 4. So if it is a skin corrosion irritant that's a level 1, that's going to be the most hazardous. 4 is the least hazardous. Then we also have chemical physical hazards as well. These are stuff that can go boom or cause some sort of explosion or flame. Explosives, flammables, oxidizers. So a lot of like your spray cans, they're going to be flammable. We're going to be required to have that, an SDS on that. Same thing, it's going to be 1 through 4, or there's different types of lettering for various hazard classes. Also, we got to discuss, physical agents such as heat. Heat's a big one now with being June outside for all the grounds bus mechanics, and for any leads that are doing any sort of outdoor activities. Be cautious of that. Heat acclimation, making sure that, you're not throwing out a new employee out there for 8 hours for the whole duration of that work shift when it's 100 degrees outside. Try to acclimate them throughout a week or two and getting them exposed to that air so they don't come into heat exhaustion right when they get out there for the whole day. Same with noise. Be cautious of noisy areas. If you are concerned with the noise area and you want us to test it, I can test it. Very simple. I'm here usually every Thursday, so anytime you guys do have any sort of concerns, I can usually address those on the following Thursday. Vibrations as well. Vibrations such as white finger syndrome that can cause you to prevent yourself from getting from having control of various feelings in your fingertips and whatnot. There's also radiation as well, but that's a lot less common in our workspace. So globally harmonized system, this just requires that all nations label the chemicals the same. We all have the same hazards. So isopropyl alcohol here is not going to be labeled differently in China or vice versa. We all have the same hazards, so we can always correlate the hazards with one another. It might come to the U.S. with a different language, but those pictograms will be the exact same. So we'll at least be able to identify various hazards on that label, even if it's not in our language. So these are the pictograms that are required to be coming from the manufacturer with the chemical. These will help explain to us what the hazard is of the chemical. Exploding bomb, flammability, an oxidizer, so you want to prevent that from having an open flame nearby. Gas cylinder, could be explosive, if the regulator gets kicked off. Corrosive material, skull and crossbones will be a toxic material. Health hazard could be something like silica. Exclamation mark could be a less serious irritant. And then the environment pictogram. So if it's the environment, such as like motor oil, we'll probably have an environment. We don't want to have that go to the storm drain and then down to the river. That can cause a lot of issues with the aquatic life. So labeling requirements from the manufacturer is going to be required to have a product identifier, the product name, pictograms, signal words such as danger or warning. Danger will be more severe chemical. Warning would be least severe. A hazard statement, such as a phrase that will state, what to do in the event, if it comes in contact with flames, or what to do to prevent yourself from getting exposed. Precautionary statements, supply information, and all this will come from the manufacturer with this proper label. And then for our secondary containers, so if we get a product from our cleaning supplier, and we want to put it into a small spray bottle, we need to have the product name and some sort of warning pictogram or the warning statements on there transferred. So that's why it's important that we reach out to our chemical provider to get smaller chemical labels with the shipment of the purchase. Here's an example of a GHS compliant label. You'll see this throughout on all the equipment that you get, or all the products that you get from your manufacturer. You're going to have the supplier name, going to have the the signal warnings, danger, the hazard statements. It's highly flammable, liquid and vapor. So either you can have that or the pictograms on your secondary container. These have one or the other. Precautionary statements, who to contact in the event that I have further questions on the product. And there's the pictograms as well. So here's some improper labeling that we've seen throughout various districts. I don't think this was taken in Richfield, but that chemical's not water, or that product's not water in there. You want to make sure you have everything be up to date on the chemical that you have in there. And then also distilled water, it's a corrosive material. Yeah, it is semi-corrosive, but it's not corrosive enough to require through OSHA GHS. So if you are going to be reusing a chemical bottle, making sure that you do have paper over the top of it if it does not have that same hazard. Secondary container exemptions. So if you guys are using a chemical for the duration of your work shift and you're not transferring it to somebody else, you don't need to have the proper chemical label on it. All you gotta have to have is the product identifier on it. So if you're using a certain cleaner for just that work shift, all you gotta have is that cleaner's name on there, and that's it. But once your shift is done, you have to pour it back into the container, and you can't be transferring it to somebody else. So the next person on the next shift will need to make their own label. It's not transferable. So if it's done in that 8-hour work shift or whatever your work shift is, you don't need to have the full label on it. SDSs are provided by the manufacturer for all hazardous materials as well. It's required that myself and Dan get that that Dan and myself get that SDS. I know Peter does a great job of doing that for Centennial, but just let us know if there's a new product in-house. Just send us the name and manufacturer. We can get the SDS ourselves if it doesn't come with it. But it's a 16 section standardized format. The stuff that I look for always is hazard identification. What can it do to me if I come in contact with it? First aid measures, what happens if I come in contact with it? If I'm not wearing a respirator, if I inhale it, what can happen to me? And then also exposure control and PPE, how to control the chemical with proper PPE or ventilation. That's what I look for when I see an SDS usually, when it's a new chemical. So anyone in the district can access our SDS database with all the chemicals that we have in the district by going through the district website. So if you go on the district website and you go to departments, facilities, and you scroll down, there'll be a health and safety tab on there. Click onto that, and then you'll find the Richfield SDS database right there. If you click onto that, it'll come to this page where you can then search in the e-binder for what chemical you have in hand or you're questioning, and we should have that in there. So if you guys ever have anything in there that's not in there, please let us know. We do our best to maintain that, but there's been a lot of new chemicals with COVID and all that coming through that we need to maintain those, update those as much as possible. And then once you do click on that, click this PDF symbol right here. The SDS will pop up, and you can have the ability to look through it, that 16 standardized format. Machine guarding is also part of the OSHA GHS. Be cautious of any sort of, blades, exposed blades, belts, pulleys, making sure that we do have some sort of machine guarding on there so no one can get pulled into it or have any body part exposed to that blade. We could have fixed blades or fixed guards, such as on that belt. It could be an adjustable guard, such as that drill press, where you can swing it in and out to help adjust any sort of drill bits. An interlock guard on this lathe, where it won't start up until the guarding is properly secured and those circuits are connected to one another. And then also that self-adjusting guard on that miter saw. Whenever you pull it down, it adjusts the guard so you can actually cut it properly still. Last slide before a break, I promise. So electrical safety basics is also very important. Do not use damaged cords. If you guys have any damaged cords, make sure Dan's aware of it. Dispose of any extension cords. If it is a permanent cord on a machine, we will probably have to have our electrician come on site to repair that cord then. Do not touch any exposed cords. Do not daisy chain like we talked about earlier. Temporary wiring, 90 days. Use a power strip if we need additional outlets. Do not overload cords. Any questions before break? All right, we'll do a 10-minute break.